orientation. The data collected will provide invaluable insights into this challenging lunar region. And Farah, how about we answer some more of those SPHEREx questions coming in? All right. We have one actually that talks about the launch window and the times that are being heard. Can you explain what 8:10 and 8:09 mean?
Yes, I think we've talked about this a lot, right? So we are trying to target a particular orbit. And in order to do that, we need to launch at a specific time. And we have to launch between 8:09:57 and 8:10:27. So it's that 30-second window in which we can launch. So what we did is we looked at, a few hours ago, we looked at, is there any collision risk? There weren't. And so what the team did is they decided to launch right in the middle of that window. That's really the optimal time to get right on that orbit. And that's why you heard us say that we're launching at 8, 10, and 12 seconds precisely. And that's going to be our launch time today.
Fantastic. And thank you to Luke for that question on Instagram. Luke C on Twitter, on X actually. And we also have Rob V on YouTube who wants to know, how long will it take to map?
So the prime mission for SPHEREx is 2 years, and during that time we're going to take 4 full maps of the universe. And so that's really the amount of time that we want to spend, but there is no propellant on board the SPHEREx. There's nothing that we're going to, that's going to deplete over time, so we hope that the mission is going to last much longer than that.
Well, thank you so much, Farah. Keep those questions coming using the hashtag #AskNASA with Falcon 9. Second stage locks loading about to begin. As you just heard, let's send it back to Megan, Mick, and Jesse.
Welcome back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California, where Megan, Mick, and I are just outside of mission control.
And Jesse, SpaceX started fueling its first stage about 20 minutes ago. So how's that looking right now?
Yeah, we're a little bit over halfway done. RP1 loading is already complete on the second stage, and we're just about 80% complete on RP1 for stage 1 and about 60% complete of liquid oxygen loading on stage 1. And we are just about to start loading liquid oxygen on stage 2 at the T-minus 16-minute mark, which we should hear a call out for that in a few seconds.
Again, a great view of the rocket on the pad there. And at the tippy top, we told you that that is the payload fairings. And inside are the spacecrafts, which were encapsulated inside those payload fairings last week.
Yeah, and as Jesse mentioned earlier, talking about the Falcon 9 rocket, those are brand new payload fairings, and SpaceX will retrieve those with their recovery vessel Go Beyond. Inside that payload fairing, we have SPHEREx, our primary mission, which is 1 spacecraft, PUNCH, which is made up of 4 spacecraft. So deployment tonight, we will see 5 spacecraft deploy into a sun-synchronous orbit.
Now, we were saying that the propellants are RP1 or rocket-grade kerosene and super cold liquid oxygen. Why those fuels and how do they launch a rocket?
Yeah, Megan. So RP1 is the fuel component. Liquid oxygen is our oxidizer, which we cooled down to make it as dense as possible. Increasing density enables us to load more of it into the vehicle. And with a fuel and an oxidizer, we still need an ignition source. So we use TTEB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, which combust when combined, lighting our fuel and oxidizer to create that thrust. It's a pretty efficient system that not only gets SPHEREx and PUNCH into space, but also allows the booster to fly back to Earth and land for another mission.
Yeah, and SPHEREx is going to scan our entire universe to gather data on billions of stars and galaxies, and then PUNCH. We'll study our sun's corona to better forecast when space weather will affect us on Earth. And Mick, again, you're with NASA's Launch Services Program, which determined that both those missions could fly together on this one launch.
Yeah, as we just heard in a previous interview, we looked at those mission requirements, we assessed the missions, found that both could be delivered to that sun-synchronous polar orbit that we want to get to this evening. The 2 missions sharing a ride on 1 rocket are very efficient, and it also gives us the most availability for our launch opportunities throughout the time period of the science. So again, looking at both of these ride shares, our first one for LSP, we're excited for launch tonight.
Yeah, again, headed to what's called a sun-synchronous polar orbit. And why does that work for both missions? Well, check out my interview with LSP engineers Philip Hargrove and Mark Hemmets. Okay, Mark, Philip told me to wear yellow today. Why?
Right. So we're going to do a little demo. So you're the sun. That's why you're wearing yellow. And I'm the earth. That's why I'm wearing blue and green. And this hula hoop is going to represent the orbit, or the path that the satellites are going to take around the earth. So we have to pay attention to a lot of things. One of them is the orientation relative to the earth. So that's this inclination. And then also the orientation relative to the sun. So as the earth moves around the sun throughout the year, it's possible that we could be facing away from the sun. We could be facing towards the sun. And for this mission, we want to be facing towards the sun the entire time. So we choose a sun synchronous orbit so that the twist of the orbit throughout the year is aligned with the Earth's rotation around the sun. So no matter where or when, we're always going to be in this orientation.
Gotcha. So I should always see every part of this orbit.
Yes.
Why is that important for the SPHEREx and PUNCH missions?
Sure. For SPHEREx, you can't look at the spacecraft without seeing this large cone on top. And that's because this is a photon shield designed to protect the sensitive instrumentation inside. And what it's sensitive to is to the sun. So with the sun always in this direction, that means we know the sun's never on this side. So that's the safe side. So that's when SPHEREx can go ahead and operate in the orbit in this direction, do their celestial sky observations, always working on this backside of the orbit, the safe side. PUNCH, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. It wants to study the sun. It wants to see the solar wind, the solar weather emanating from the sun coming to Earth. So this is a perfect orbit for them as they go around, because they'll go ahead and get maximum viewing time of the sun.
You know, we've been talking about in the broadcast how PUNCH is actually made up of 4 satellites. SPHEREx is 1. So basically you have 5 spacecraft that you're relatively, near each other as it's going around the Earth. How do you make sure that they don't interfere with one another?
Right, sure. We do a couple things because you're right, that is very important. First thing is SPHEREx is going to go ahead and separate, pointing away from the sun, obviously, so they're going to separate in this direction. After SPHEREx separates, the Falcon's going to do a small altitude lowering maneuver with their attitude control thrusters, just to lower by a couple kilometers, so they're not exactly the same orbit. And then the PUNCH spacecraft are going to separate in different directions. So the first 2 PUNCH spacecraft are going to separate equal and opposite along the velocity vector. The other 2 canted off that vector. So that puts them all in different directions, even SPHEREx in different directions, keeping them all safely moving apart from one another.
Because SPHEREx doesn't want to be affected by the sun, can't be affected by the sun. Were there special considerations on the ascent up?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's all about protecting the spacecraft and keeping the sun out of this top half. So what we're going to do is, normally we launch out of Vandenberg directly into the orbit plane, but instead we're going to launch east of the orbit plane we want to be in. That puts us on the dark side, or in the shadow, during those early phases of the mission. So as we then come out of shadow, we'll coast down to the South Pole. We'll circularize the orbit in the second burn and also do a plane change to put us in that sun synchronous orbit plane we want to be in. So that keeps it safe for the spacecraft.
Guys, I know a lot of work and time went into, all these considerations that you just walked us through. I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to explain it so easily to us. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. That was a great explanation of the orbit both missions will use. And if you're just joining us, we are approaching 10 minutes until liftoff. Farah, the moment is finally here.
Oh my God, my heart is beating so fast. I'm so excited.
So I know we are going to talk to you more about that in a minute, but we've also been taking your live questions tonight. So let's get to a few more.
Okay,
right?
let's do it.
Okay.
Just distracting me.
I know. We have one from Stardom Observatory on YouTube who asks, how long do you think it will take before we get the first images from SPHEREx?
So today we'll be separating from the launch vehicle. We'll actually get the first bits of data, hopefully very soon after separation. Definitely the team is going to be working through the night. And then we go through a commissioning period. So we'll take a few days to make sure everything is good. Then we'll power on the instrument. So it's going to take a little while, but we hope that commissioning period will take about a month to 6 weeks. And then after that, we'll be moving into the real science. But even during that commissioning period, we'll be getting some images too.
That will be great to see those first images come
Yes.
in. So keep those questions coming using the hashtag AskNASA. And Farah, launch is just minutes away now, so tell us how much this moment means for you and your team.
I've been on this mission for about 3 years now. I saw the spacecraft grow from, paper design to being built and tested. We shipped it then from BAE Systems in Boulder, Colorado over to here. And now we've spent about 2 months here processing. We're getting ready for launch. It's really, really a big moment. And the team has gone through such difficult times with the fires recently in LA, COVID, right when we were designing the spacecraft. So I know everyone is extremely proud and really excited to be here today.
And where were your team watching tonight?
So we have a lot of our team members in this building here at Vandenberg Space Force Space looking at the data, participating in those polls. We have people at the SpaceX building, and we also have part of the team at JPL at the Mission Operations Center, because once we launch, they will be the ones taking over operations, and they'll be working there through the night, taking care of the spacecraft.
All right. Well, Farah, we are now under 9 minutes until liftoff of SPHEREx and PUNCH on a Falcon 9 rocket here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Now, let's head over to SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, where our team of NASA and SpaceX commentators will count us down to liftoff.
Thanks, Raquel. If you're just joining us, I'm Jessie Anderson, a senior production manager here at SpaceX, and joining me are Megan Cruz and Mick Waltman from NASA.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, the three of us have been commentating through the launch countdown, and we're going to continue to do that for about an hour after liftoff to show teams deploying the SPHEREx and PUNCH spacecrafts into space.
Yeah, SpaceX started fueling the Falcon 9 at about T-minus 35 minutes, and things are looking really good as we load propellants. We should hear a call out here soon as we get ready for engine chill at about T-minus 7 minutes. Engine chill is where we flow a small amount of that liquid oxygen into the engine to prepare for full flow at the cryogenic temperatures that the Merlin engines will see.
Yeah, exactly. And after that, stage 1 will wrap up RP1 loading around the T-minus 6 minute mark. Then stage 1 liquid oxygen loading will wrap up at T-minus 3 minutes, and stage 2 at T-minus 2 minutes before launch. And we are coming up on that T-minus 7 minute mark that Mick mentioned. Stage 1 engine chill coming up here in a couple seconds. Perfect timing. There's that call out for engine chill.
All right, so the SPHEREx spacecraft will collect a treasure trove of new information about hundreds of millions of celestial objects. And then you have PUNCH, made up of 4 satellites that will study the sun and how it creates space weather that can significantly impact us on Earth.
Yeah, all 5 spacecraft are packed inside that payload fairing that you see on top of the Falcon 9 rocket. LSP is keeping a close eye on those spacecraft with the spacecraft customer, and they will be transitioning to spacecraft internal power as we complete about T-minus 5.
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
All right, there's a call out for stage 1, RP1 load complete. We still have a little more loading left to go. They have to finish loading liquid oxygen into both stages, and there's about another 4 minutes left of that. But again, you know what we're not tracking?
Copy. Spacecraft is on internal power and configured for launch.
Well, that's a good call out there, too. That's Denton Gibson, Dr. Denton Gibson, again, NASA's launch manager, confirming that the spacecraft are on internal power. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Mick?
Yeah, SPHEREx and PUNCH on in battery power, getting ready for launch tonight. I'm sure Farah is sitting at the desk just excited for this milestone as the spacecraft are now getting ready for launch later this evening.
And so flying both SPHEREx and PUNCH on one rocket, I mean, it just saves money. It's a great opportunity.
It's very efficient to be able to take advantage of one rocket and the multiple launch opportunities we can get and get 2 spacecraft with same science into the same orbit.
Yeah.
And excuse some of those loud sounds. We are actually in the factory here in Hawthorne, so you may hear some work happening behind us. And coming up, a couple things are going to be happening back to back. We have the transporter erector, which is also known as the TE or the strong back. It will start retracting away from the vehicle, and that's that large.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
Good call out there. We're pressurizing in preparation for that strong back retraction. Again, that's that transporter erector, that structure there on your screen right next to the vehicle. It provides propellants and electricity to the rocket until just before launch. And we will first begin to see the clamp arms, which are just below the fairing, begin to open up. Once those clamp arms are fully open, then the TE can retract away from the vehicle.
Strong back retract has started.
There's that call out that it has now begun. And so we will see those clamp arms begin to open there on your screen. It'll be very slow and slight. But once again, once they are fully open, then the TE can recline just about a couple degrees away from the vehicle. And there you can see those clamp arms moving.
NLM, this is LD on Countdown Net.
This is NLM.
The NLM providing a status that the Falcon 9 is healthy and we're tracking no issues heading into launch. Can you provide a final verification status for your team?
NASA's go for launch.
Great, thank you.
And a quick poll there. It sounds like we are go for launch. And you can see that transport erector moving away from the vehicle. It'll be just 2 degrees. And then we can start pressurizing the vehicles coming up here shortly. But propellant is still loading on the vehicles. We're coming up on T-minus 3 minutes, where liquid oxygen loading on stage 1 will complete here shortly.
Yeah, Jesse, as we said earlier, this is the 3rd flight of this booster for the Falcon 9 rocket. Those brand new payload fairings that will be retrieved by Go Beyond downrange. Inside those fairings, as we just heard from the NLM, everything is go. The spacecraft are on internal power. Both SPHEREx and PUNCH are healthy, and we are ready to proceed to launch tonight.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
All right, and all that's left now is to finish loading liquid oxygen into the 2nd stage. Again, we're targeting exactly 8, 10, 12 seconds for liftoff here from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Again, a beautiful wide shot right there of the launch pad. We'll stay with you until we deploy both SPHEREx and PUNCH in a sun-synchronous orbit around Earth. 2 really cool missions. Again, SPHEREx will deploy first, starting at about 40 minutes after launch, and then PUNCH's 4 spacecraft will deploy about 10 minutes after that in 2 batches. Now, as always, we're hoping for some great live views of all those deployments. Next call out we're expecting, again, in less than 10 seconds, that stage 2 LOX loading is complete.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there's that call out. Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is now complete, which means that propellant loading is now complete on Falcon 9. That means 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen are loaded on the vehicle. And gas closeouts are in work now, and you can see some of those white clouds on your screen. That is us venting out the liquid oxygen lines from the transporter erector, and when that cold gas meets that warmer ambient air, it turns into condensation, almost like what you see when you get condensation on a cold glass of water. We're coming up on T-minus 1 minute, where the internal flight computers will take over the launch countdown.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And there we heard in startup. So next up will be the go from launch director for SpaceX. This means that Falcon 9 will be ready for liftoff. Let's get ready to hear the go from SpaceX launch director for launch tonight.
LD is go for launch.
And there we hear the LD is go for launch, targeting a T0 at 8, 10, 12.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Range is go and weather is go.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go SPHEREx, go PUNCH.
SPHEREx and PUNCH on their way to map
Space
out
propulsion is
our
nominal.
universe like never before and revolutionize
Vehicles
space
pitching downrange.
weather forecasting.
We are T plus 30 seconds into flight, and we are currently firing all 9 of those M1D engines. And after about 50 seconds, we'll begin throttling down those engines, which slow the vehicle down just slightly in order to prepare.
Telemetry nominal.
In order to prepare for passing through max Q, and that is maximum aerodynamic pressure. That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see during ascent, so slowing the vehicle down.
Vehicle supersonic.
Slowing the vehicle down will reduce some of the loads that it experiences through max Q. That's coming up here in a few seconds.
Max Q.
Right on time. And now we have a few events that are coming up in quick succession, so we want to lay them out for you really quick. It's going to start with main engine cutoff. That's MECO, and that's when SpaceX shuts down all of its 9 engines on its first stage, which we are getting a great view down the pipe right there. Shortly after that, Stage 1 and 2 will separate from each other, and then seconds later, the first stage will flip back towards Earth, while the second stage will continue on, igniting its MVAC engine. Now, that call out is Second Engine Start 1, or SE1, and this burn will last about 6 minutes. After that, the boost back burn on the first stage to put it back on a trajectory towards landing zone 4, which again is back here at Vandenberg, just about 1,400 feet from where Falcon launched from in the first place. Wow, look at that shot. All Merlin engines firing right there, and we have such a great live shot of it.
Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
Coming up next, we will see fairing deploy, and that's when the two fairing halves will separate and expose SPHEREx and PUNCH to the atmosphere of space. SpaceX will attempt, they will actually retrieve those fairings back downrange on Go Beyond once they get back to Earth.
Fairing separation confirmed.
There we hear fairing deployment confirmed, and what you see on the screen is the fairing separating and showing SPHEREx and PUNCH on their way to space.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
There you see on your screen and heard that call out that the boost back burn is concluding on the first stage vehicle. That's the first of 3 burns that it needs to make its way back down to Earth. This is the 3rd flight for today's first stage, which previously supported 2 other launches, NROL 126 in November of 2024 and Transporter 12 just in January of this year. And you may have noticed some soot on the vehicle prior to launch. During the entry burn, which is coming up here in a couple minutes, Falcon 9 is decelerating by reigniting 3 of the 9 Merlin M1D engines. Now, this causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, or the plume, which deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle's surface, and that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. With each flight, the soot builds up just a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle, giving Falcon 9 its distinctive reused look.
We're just so lucky to have these great views. Again, we have a split screen here. On the left side is the first stage, and you see those grid fins. They're guiding that first stage back to a trajectory here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. And then on the the right-hand side on your screen, you have the second stage, and you see that MVAC engine is still burning there. Mick, LSP just works really closely with SpaceX to be able to fly reused rockets for NASA missions.
Yeah, Megan, at LSP, we look at all the requirements for all the missions that we have. And as I said earlier, we selected SpaceX for the SPHEREx and PUNCH mission. And looking at all those requirements, we ensure that even previously flown launch vehicles will meet those requirements, providing NASA with a dependable and a cost-effective ride to space for this, our first rideshare mission.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, hello. We're in your bottom corner right there. I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and with me is Mick Woltman with NASA, and also Jesse Anderson, a senior production manager at SpaceX. Now, Mick is with NASA's Launch Services Program, which is managing today's launch, so he's going to have a lot of interesting things to say to us to walk us through what we're seeing today. And, of course, we have Jesse from SpaceX. Really great ride so far. We're so lucky to have you guys. LSP chose SpaceX to deliver SPHEREx and PUNCH to what's called a sun-synchronous orbit 650 kilometers above the Earth. And SPHEREx is going to help answer some of the biggest astrophysical questions out there. You know, like how do galaxies form and evolve, how water and other key ingredients for life came to be. And then PUNCH is made up of 4 satellites that will study the sun and see how it creates space weather that can significantly impact us on Earth. I mean, Mick, we're talking about issues with GPS or satellites, things like that.
Yeah, it's going to
Stage
be
1 entry burn startup.
And there we heard the call for the first stage entry burn startup, looking for entry shutdown here in just a few seconds and getting ready for landing burn in just about a minute.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
There we have Jesse, confirmed engine shutdown for the entry burn. But back to what you were saying, Megan, about the science of the mission. I know Farah is sitting there looking. We are so happy that we got liftoff tonight. But you know, the most important thing about these 2 missions is exactly what you were talking about. Once we get them deployed, the science that they will have to be able to help us here on Earth with some of the things we want. The spectral map of the universe will be incredible. And that solar wind and solar...
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Flight termination system has been safe.
Stage
That's
1
really good news.
transonic.
And it sounds like stage 1 is on its way back. So that science is very important to us here on Earth. So we're looking forward to getting these deployed this evening.
We do have the landing burn coming up here in a few seconds. That'll be a single engine burn and the last burn that the vehicle needs to land.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There's that call out. Landing burn has begun. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 4E.
Stage 1 landing light deploy.
And such an awesome view of Falcon 9 touching down
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
on landing zone 4E, confirming the 3rd landing for this booster.
We had applause here on the factory room floor. It's a fun place to see. You know, it would have been cool to see it at Vandenberg, but this was pretty cool, too.
Yeah, I was going to say I love the launches, but you know what? I love the way SpaceX makes landing look easy,
Stage
too.
2 FTS has saved.
It's still one of my favorite parts, as many times as we've seen it.
And right there on the
Convex
screen,
shutdown.
we lost the signal for a second, but basically we're keeping an eye on the second stage's first burn. That's continuing, and that burn's going to last until just after T plus 8 minutes. And then it will shut down. There will be a coast phase, and then we will relight a second time. All right, so again, first burn out of the way. We will see a second burn later. That's going to happen around T plus 39 minutes. We hope that you stay with us to see the deployment of both SPHEREx and PUNCH. But for now, we're going to send it back to Raquel and Farah, because I know Farah is probably cheering right now.
Yes, absolutely.
You are correct. Absolutely. If you're just joining us, I'm NASA's Raquel Villanueva, joined by Farah Alabay, bringing you live launch coverage from Vandenberg Space Force Base along the central coast of California. And just over 9 minutes ago at 8:10 p.m. Pacific time, we watched as a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket lifted off. And Farah, I think that is the happiest you've ever been, and I've known you for years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm so happy that we're finally in space. And of course, we still have to get through separation. But oh my gosh, being in this building, everything was shaking. But Mick will be jealous, because really that sonic boom as it was landing, it caught me by surprise. It was very loud.
It shook the entire building we were in right now. How does it feel now to have it off the ground?
We still have, a good 30 minutes to go before we separate. So we still have to hold on for that. But it feels really great to have SPHEREx in space. We saw a peak at the photon shields when the fairing separated, and I saw she was all in one piece, so we're good to go.
Fantastic. The rocket is flying to important missions today. One is your SPHEREx, a space telescope that will create the most colorful 3D map of the cosmos ever, and PUNCH, 4 small satellites that will study how the sun's outer atmosphere turns into the solar wind that fills our solar system. So I have a little pop quiz for you, Farah. Do you know what each of those missions stand for? Let's start with yours.
SPHEREx is the spectrophotometer for the history of the universe, epoch of reionization, and ISIS. Oh my gosh, I'm ISIS Explorer.
Got it, yes. It was a close one, but you got it. And now how about PUNCH?
It's the polarimeter to unify the corona and the heliosphere. That one's easy.
Well, great. That was an A+ for you there. Before its journey in space, SPHEREx had to go comprehensive testing. Farah was there for the whole process and will give us a behind-the-scenes look.
This is the clean room where SPHEREx is being built and tested. We call SPHEREx our small but mighty mission because it has some really ambitious science goals. The first is that we're trying to look back in time to see what happened in the first second after the Big Bang. We also want to understand how galaxies have evolved throughout history. And finally, we're looking for water and other basic ingredients for life in the places where stars and planets are forming.
BAE Systems partnered with JPL in the design and development of SPHEREx. BAE Systems was responsible for the integration and test of the spacecraft bus, which is everything below this metal ring you see around the center of the observatory. In addition, BAE Systems built the telescope that's at the center of the SPHEREx observatory.
The SPHEREx observatory is really two pieces. There's the bottom part that we call the spacecraft, and that's really the guts of the whole thing. It has the computer, the telecom system, the control system, the solar array on the backside, and then the top part is the payload. The payload consists of the telescope itself, the thing that takes the images.
The telescope is at the heart of how SPHEREx will observe the entire night sky.
And then these cones are thermal shields that help us keep the telescope cool.
The SPHEREx telescope and the detectors are required to be very temperature stable during their observations in order to collect that science data. And they lend this very distinctive structure to a spacecraft, one that I haven't seen before in my career.
So a spacecraft is built in the clean room, but we can't do all of our testing in there. We actually have different facilities that help us mimic the different environments that the spacecraft is going to see in space. The first facility that we get to when we come out of our clean room is the thermal vacuum chamber. Here at BAE, it's called Titan. It's a special chamber where we can lock in the spacecraft, pull out the atmosphere, and mimic the vacuum of space. It also can mimic the hot and the cold of space. So if you can imagine when SPHEREx is on orbit around Earth, it's going to see the sun, but also eclipses, so it gets really hot and really cold. And we can mimic all of that in that special chamber. Down the hall over there, beyond the curtain, are three more facilities. The first is the Fiesta area. That's where we do our acoustics testing. It's a whole big party for the spacecraft. We surround the spacecraft with these giant speaker stacks, and we blast sound at it, the same sound that it's going to see when it launches into space. Behind it is the vibration lab. That's a special table where we bolt down the spacecraft and shake it in all sorts of different directions, mimicking the shaking that it's going to go through when it's launching on that rocket. And then there's the electromagnetic interference and compatibility test. It's a really quiet room that absorbs all the sound, and we put the spacecraft in there and make sure that all of its components, they all emit radio frequencies. We'll make sure that they can all live in the same environment and they don't interact with each other in a weird way. There's one last test that happens here in the clean room, and it's called the separation shock test. What we do there is that we take the spacecraft and we mount it to the payload adapter ring. We then lift up the whole stack and mimic the separation that happens between the rocket and the spacecraft. When that happens, there's this big shock event, so we want to make sure that the spacecraft survives that and also that all the pieces fit together.
Years of hard work really paying off tonight, and this moment is so meaningful for the SPHEREx team and the institution of JPL. This year began with devastating wildfires across the Los Angeles area, including the Eaton fire that burned dangerously close to JPL. And Farah, hundreds of employees were impacted.
Yes, including members of our very own SPHEREx team. Some were forced to evacuate, and unfortunately others lost their homes. And it all happened right as we were preparing to ship the SPHEREx Observatory from Boulder, Colorado to Vandenberg Space Force Base. Many of us were right in the middle of final shipment preparations when evacuation orders started rolling in. We even had to change our transport route to avoid fires, heavy smoke, and road closures, something none of us had ever expected to have to plan for.
And throughout the firefighting effort, JPL provided water resources and a helicopter landing area for firefighters. First responders and our community went above and beyond, helping those in need and working tirelessly to protect JPL and nearby homes. And we would like to thank them for their courage dedication and support.
Yeah, I think this is exactly the time when our community really shines, and we're so thankful for them.
Absolutely. You know, and someone else we'd like to thank today is the director of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Lori Leshin, and she joins us now. Lori, it is so great to have you here.
Go SPHEREx! It's so exciting, and thank you for that wonderful opening about our first responders and our whole brave community. It's really special.
Absolutely. And Lori, this launch is a true bright spot for JPL's family. How are you feeling after watching that launch?
You know what? It's such the culmination of the hard work of so many people over many, many years. And even up towards the end, we have had quite a launch campaign here with lots of stops and starts. And when you're outside and are able to see that rocket go up, and this one, it flew right through Orion's belt. Oh, gorgeous. It just makes it all worth it.
Yeah, you can feel the rumble here too.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, SPHEREx is a great example of a smaller, more focused mission with incredibly ambitious goals. How do missions like these fit into the bigger picture of what JPL does?
Well, at JPL, we're really all about cutting edge science, no matter what size the spacecraft it is, right? We do big science with big missions like Europa Clipper and the Perseverance rover, but and SPHEREx is an example of doing really big science in a somewhat smaller mission. And so it's just great to see when there's the right kind of science question, we build the mission to answer it.
And SPHEREx is also a collaboration between multiple partners. Can you explain to us how that led to the mission success and maybe how that might influence future collaborations?
Absolutely. I always say, you know, cosmic teamwork makes the dream work here, right? So collaboration is key to everything we do, whether it's with universities across the country and around the world, like we've done on SPHEREx. We have international partner Korea involved in the SPHEREx mission, and of course our industry partner at BAE Systems and the PI at Caltech. So it really is taking the best from lots of different organizations, and that's why our motto is Dare Mighty Things Together, because everything we do is about the team.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lori. We appreciate you having you here with us. You know, launch is really just the beginning for the SPHEREx team. Right now, mission control is kicking into high gear at JPL. For a sneak peek at what's happening behind the scenes, I caught up with the project manager and flight director for SPHEREx. Can you describe why this space is so critical to the mission?
Well, this room, the Earth Orbiting Mission Operations Center, will be the nerve center for operating SPHEREx. All of the telemetry that comes from the space vehicle will arrive here, and all of the commands that we send to the space vehicle will originate here. On launch day, I'm up at Vandenberg Space Force Base and part of the countdown and the launch management team. One of the key roles in this room we call the Mission Operations Manager. That's one of the people that I will poll during the countdown. Another key person is my deputy, the deputy project manager. Since I will be at Vandenberg when all the action is going on down here, she will function as the project manager in this room. Another one of the key people is Varjan Gorgian, and he'll be sitting at the other end of this room.
Great, thank you so much, Jim. We'll actually go catch up with him and find out what he's doing. Varjan, tell us the role of the flight director.
Well, the flight director puts together a procedure of all the critical events that happen to make sure that the spacecraft is healthy, that the instrument is healthy, as well as all the people who need to run the spacecraft are all ready to go.
And, you know, this room really kicks into high gear after launch.
Absolutely. So then after that, when we have all these people who are ready, they're waiting to get the signal that the spacecraft has turned on and it's detumbling and it's starting to send the signals to all the people who are running it, as well as critical people like navigation to know where the spacecraft is and then tell the ground stations where to look for the spacecraft to get all the important data. There's a huge number of people that have to come together to make things work. In this case, we have BAE Systems, which built the spacecraft and the telescope. They're going to be here to monitor all that to make sure it's healthy. We have people from Caltech who built the camera, which is going to be giving us our critical data. They're going to be here, as well as all the other people from JPL who are bringing this together to make sure that it all works together.
And finally, can you tell us about a fun tradition we have here at JPL that involves some Lucky Peanuts?
Oh, absolutely. So the Lucky Peanuts have been involved with JPL's exploration of space from the very early days, and so we always think of them as a valuable tradition to make things go well.
Now, we also actually have some Lucky Peanuts here with us, and I have seen Farah snack on them all the way here.
Definitely, we need a little bit more of that good luck for separation coming up.
I'll take us through separation. And now let's send it back to Jesse Anderson in Hawthorne with a look at SpaceX's history of supporting the next generation of space exploration with NASA.
It's incredible having the opportunity to support NASA science missions to space, just like today's mission. In fact, last month was the 10th anniversary of the very first mission Falcon 9 and SpaceX launched for NASA, the Discover Space Weather mission, which launched in February of 2015, which you can see there on your screen. Since first taking flight in 2010, Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have completed more than 450 launches and more than 380 reflights. As the first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight, Falcon 9 has helped drive down launch costs while increasing flight cadence, making space more accessible for all types of missions. Falcon is helping NASA build our future in space through contracts like the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative and agreements like the one behind today's mission, the NASA Launch Services 2 contract. SpaceX is enabling access to space at a cost and cadence that no other vehicle flying today can match, unlocking a wide array of new government, commercial, and scientific opportunities in space. Before Falcon 9, launching to space was infrequent and cost much more than it does today. Lowering the cost of access to space is the foundation for humanity's next steps into the solar system. More launches accelerate development, enabling more small satellite and private research customers to launch their work to space, which in turn helps stimulate the wider space economy here on Earth. And serving both cargo and human spaceflight missions, Dragon has visited the International Space Station 45 times. In addition to NASA's crew missions, Falcon 9 and Dragon are advancing human spaceflight through private astronaut missions as well, including the Axiom missions Inspiration 4, Polaris Dawn, and our upcoming From 2 mission. And missions like SpaceX's Transporter and Bandwagon rideshare programs help make access to space even more affordable by sharing the cost of a single launch across multiple customers. All of this to say, reusability is the key innovation that is making space more accessible. Now, we are T plus 23 minutes into today's mission, and in a few minutes, in about 15 minutes or so, we will be reigniting that second stage to continue the journey with SPHEREx and PUNCH. We'll send it back to Raquel.
Thank you, Jesse. PUNCH, along with students from the University of Colorado Boulder, are bringing ancient solar observations to life. Their project, Solar Stones, transforms historic petroglyphs into art. Let's take a look at how it's connecting the past to modern science.
Sitting next to me here are what we call our solar stones, and although we did not originally create the images depicted on these tablets, we replicated them from ancient petroglyphs down in Chaco Canyon National Park that were created around 1,000 years ago by the ancestral Pueblo people there. So this over here is the final version of our tablet, and it is a depiction of what we believe is a total solar eclipse around the year 1097. And the reason we believe that is because looking at this, it has all the telltale signs of an eclipse. It has an occultation in the center, where the moon would be blotting out the sun, this very circular shape. It has the solar corona out and along the sides, and up here on the top is what is believed to be a reflection of Venus.
While these tablets would be really good for any learner, we collaborated with the Colorado School of the Blind so that we could make these tablets accessible to low vision learners.
Space is typically a very visual field. You look up at the stars, you look at pictures of space, but if you can't see that, then you're pretty much completely blocked out from being able to study this and be able to understand this part of history. And so this way we have an exhibit that people can learn from if they are sighted or not sighted.
It took a lot of time to figure out how much detail we needed, how deep the objects needed to be, what textures we needed to use. A lot of these things that we didn't expect we gained context through lots of user testing. So I think this project is really valuable because it allows people to interact with space in a completely different framework.
Every person has something they can contribute to the study of space. And so our hope is that not only can the blind and low vision community be included in this part of history, but that sighted learners can potentially learn things easier with a tactile experience.
Well, those solar stones are so cool. And with us now is Punch Principal Investigator Craig DeForest. So glad you could join us, Craig.
Thank you for having me.
And I see you brought some examples with you today.
I did indeed. So Punch is studying the sun, astrophysics at home, right around us. And in that, we're carrying on a tradition that goes all the way back to the ancients. So this is a 3D printed representation of what may be the oldest representation of the solar corona in a durable medium. This was recorded life-size. It's this large. Somebody about 1,000 years ago chipped this into the rock right near what is now the visitor center at Chaco Canyon. And this is consistent with, and many believe it to be, a representation of the solar eclipse of 1097, which occurred over Chaco Canyon. People actually witnessed it and observed the corona around us. So that ties us from the ancients to the modern esoterica of spaceflight.
And why was it important for Chaco Canyon to be the location for the Punch mission solar stones?
So we organized our outreach program around ancient and modern sun watching, and Chaco was a large center of culture about 1,000 years ago. The folks who lived here at that time had a long history of science, the technology that they had in hand, and of observing the sun around them to predict their environment and their future in much the same way that we do today. Though, of course, they were looking for things like agricultural planting times and things like that. But that thread of human curiosity looking at the environment around us extends all the way to what we do at NASA today.
So speaking of what we do at NASA today, so Punch has a coronagraph that sort of mimics a solar eclipse, right? And that allows us to study the corona. Can you explain how that works?
Certainly. So normally we can't see the sun's corona or the much fainter solar wind that Punch will image. And the reason for that is the sky is too bright. The sun is very bright in the sky is very bright. We normally can't see the corona unless the moon blocks the sun out. When we're standing in the shadow of the moon, we can see around the planetoid to see the solar corona extending out into space. But that doesn't stop. That extends all the way out and washes over the Earth. So Punch is in space. We can, instead of the moon, apply a very carefully crafted piece of metal to cast a shadow on our camera and allow us to see the corona 24/7 around the clock.
Wow. And, we really appreciate your expertise. We have some Punch questions coming in for viewers. Do you mind if we answer a few right now?
Let's do it.
All right, let's see what we have here. We have Rosanelle Acosta on YouTube wants to know, how does the satellite improve our ability to predict phenomena such as solar storms and their impact on Earth?
So Punch will allow us to forecast space weather much better than we can now. Right now, we look at the space near the sun, the corona, and observe storms forming and leaving the sun. They streak out across the solar system at 1,000,000 miles an hour or more. And then we extrapolate all the way across the void to our planet. We don't have a way of measuring them in transit. So with Punch, we'll be able to track them in 3D as they make the entire journey to the Earth. So that's very similar to what we see if you saw the weather report earlier. We always look at those geosynchronous images of the Earth to track weather storms as they cross the face of the planet. We hope to do the same type of thing for space weather forecasting, where we can track the storms rather than just taking samples here and there.
Well, Farah loves weather forecasting now, so she'll be tuning in for that. Kelly on Instagram wants to know, why is Punch a constellation of satellites?
So Punch is a constellation because we want to look out from the sun in all directions, up to 45 degrees from the star. That's a 90-degree field of view. It would go from the horizon to the zenith. We had to get our spacecraft close to the ground stations because we wanted to radio a lot of data back to the Earth. That meant there was an enormous planet in the way. So we had to make the instrument as large as the planet to look out in all directions. The only way to do that was to mount it on 4 spacecraft.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, Craig, thank you so much for your expertise. We really appreciate it. And we will be taking more questions later on the broadcast, so keep them coming using the hashtag AskNASA. And as we approach SPHEREx spacecraft separation, Farah, let's check back in with Megan, Mick, and Jesse.
Welcome back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. Megan, Mick, and I are just outside of Mission Control, where teams continue to monitor Falcon 9's second stage.
And we have a view here that we're looking at, and we're seeing that stage 2 is currently coasting near Antarctica right now. So where it needs to be, we are loving the trajectory and seeing the data that we're getting back. The Falcon 9 lifted off of Vandenberg Space Force Base about 31 minutes ago. It's carrying 2 NASA science missions, SPHEREx and PUNCH, and both are headed to a sun-synchronous orbit around 650 kilometers above the Earth.
Yeah, and what does that mean for us? That means that we will be passing over the same part of the Earth at roughly the same local solar time each day. That means that the lighting conditions are consistent for observations, which is important to SPHEREx and PUNCH. For SPHEREx, that provides a consistent illumination condition, reducing background noise from the varying sun angles. And for PUNCH, it keeps them in a fixed Sun-Earth viewing geometry, crucial for tracking the solar wind's continuous evolution. In short, this orbit allows both missions to maximize their scientific observations with minimal interference from the Earth's shadow.
Yeah, basically, SPHEREx likes the sun and PUNCH does not like the sun. So they're really
That's
riding
another way
that.
to say it.
So they're really riding that day-night line, and it's just perfect. You know, that's why again we're flying these 2 missions together. So again, we're going to gather some really, really great science. SPHEREx is going to map our entire universe to gather data on billions of stars and galaxies, and then PUNCH is going to study our sun to really better forecast space weather and how it affects us.
And the second stage with SPHEREx and PUNCH will coast for another about 7 more minutes before we have another ignition of the MVAC engine. And then following that, we will deploy SPHEREx first and then PUNCH's 4 spacecraft. As always, we're planning to have live views of each of those deployments starting at T plus 40 minutes.
Yes, we can't wait. So we'll see you back here soon. For now, let's send it back to the hostess at Vandenberg Space Force Base with Raquel and Farah.
Thank you so much. Turning our attention back to SPHEREx, the Space Telescope is gearing up to map the entire sky like never before. With special photon shields and an ultra-cool design, here's how it will spot hidden cosmic secrets in infrared light.
This is SPHEREx, NASA's cosmic mapmaker. It will scan the entire sky, charting the positions of hundreds of millions of galaxies. But why does it look like my dog after his last visit to the vet?
These concentric cones help keep SPHEREx cool and shielded from nearby bright objects. Anyway, continue.
Ah, of course. SPHEREx has 3 cones, which are called photon shields. They block light and heat from the sun and the Earth. That's a big deal because without those shields, the telescope's detectors would be blinded. But SPHEREx also needs to be cold because it detects infrared light, or wavelengths slightly longer than what the human eye can see. Infrared is emitted by warm objects on Earth and out in the universe. It's also emitted by the telescope. Keeping it cold reduces the infrared glow, which lets SPHEREx see faint objects that are really, really far away.
That's right. These aren't cones of shame. They're SPHEREx's cones of fame. Here you can see one of SPHEREx's 3 cones being assembled. They sit atop this shiny jewel of a structure called a V-groove radiator. The mirrored surface directs heat out into space, cooling the telescope and the infrared detectors,
Cooling them to minus 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That is cold.
SPHEREx can help us study everything from what happened a few seconds after the Big Bang to where water comes from in planetary systems. That's why its full name is Spectrophotometer for History of the Universe, Epoch of Reionization, and ICE's Explorer.
And I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
You can just keep calling it SPHEREx.
And so I will. The V-groove radiator and the photon shields surround the heart of SPHEREx, the telescope. It's a feat of modern engineering, designed with incredible precision. And it looks tilted?
That's not a mistake. That tilt helps it see the entire sky while under the protection of the photon shield. Do you mind if I get back to work?
Sure, let's wrap this up. The cone of fame, the gorgeous jewel, the tilted telescope. These are all part of NASA's next cosmic mapmaker, SPHEREx.
That passive cooling is really incredible.
Absolutely. And actually, SPHEREx instrument scientist Phil Korngut joins us to talk about that cooling process. Yeah. Thanks for being here, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. So exciting. So indeed, yes, SPHEREx uses a totally passive cooling process. That means we have no refrigerators, we have no liquid cryogens or anything like that, and we use actually the coldness of deep, dark space to bring the temperature of our instrument down. And to show you how that works, we made a little demo here. This is a little thermal model of SPHEREx, and you can see it's got its three, iconic photon shields. And then inside there, you can see that we've got a model of the telescope and the focal plane radiator. So back in Pasadena, we took this thing to do a little demonstration to show you how that might work. So we put it up on the roof of the Cahill Building for Astrophysics, which is actually the building that we assembled the SPHEREx instrument in. And we put it up there with a great view of the night sky. So there's thermal engineer Brad Moore and I getting everything set up. And the point is that using that night sky, even here on Earth, we can cool it down. So here in this time lapse, as we left it out there overnight, you can see why this is harder on the Earth. Those clouds up there, the atmosphere is actually pretty dark in the infrared. Not to mention that air makes conductive heating between the Earth and the radiator. You can see also there we left the camera in the foreground. That's actually an infrared camera, so you can see what's happening with the heat glowing off of the telescope inside. So you can see here, as we look in the infrared, there's a lot of light coming off of that telescope because it's warm. And as the time lapse goes on, you see that light coming down, that glow that's coming off the infrared as it dumps out to deep space. If you look to the outside of this, there's a glow around the photon shields, and that's from the Earth coming up. And so inside, it looks dark because it's reflecting the cold sky from the photon shields. And as we go on, you can see that light comes down, and our telescope is getting cooler. So the next morning, we come in and see what happened to our experiment. There's Brad and I coming in. You can see the glow from our hot coffee. This is an infrared video, so you see all the light that's actually glowing off of us at room temperature. Here we are looking in there to see what we found, and that's what it looks like. That radiator was nice and frosty. You can see when I swipe my finger across it, there's all that dew on there, and that's because we cool down using passive cooling below the dew point, and we condensed water, and we made a little frost on the outside, and we did some passive cooling on Earth.
Well, Phil, that's actually what my car looked like this morning with the windshield wipers filled with dew.
That's right, and that's actually passive cooling. And I bet you, if you looked at where your car was parked, it's actually had a great view of the sky. And if you maybe parked under, like a garage lid or a tree or something, you wouldn't have that because it didn't get to passively cool.
And so SPHEREx is going to use that passive cooling to detect those super faint galaxies, right?
That's right, yeah. And so as you saw in that video, which was in infrared, warm things are actually glowing like crazy. So we're trying to detect, light that comes from tiny blips of these galaxies all the way across on the other side of the universe. So in order to get there, we have to cool down the foreground because all that light is just swamping us, and we've got to get the light from the telescope glowing down so we can see those tiny blips across the universe.
Right. Well, Phil, thank you so much for joining us. Now let's head back to the team in Hawthorne, California for a status update.
All right, we're now 39 minutes into the mission, and coming up is what's called SES-2, and that's when SpaceX will reignite its second stage engine, which you see right on your screen there.
Yeah, we are expecting that SES-2. This is the second burn for this mission to ignite. There it is, right on time. You can see that there on your screen. Now this is about a 50-second burn for this burn. And this extra burn, this is a single Merlin vacuum engine, has about 220,500 pounds of thrust. And burning just for about 50 seconds doesn't seem like much, but it's just enough to take the second stage with the payloads attached to its targeted drop-off orbit.
That's exactly right, Jesse. This burn will put SPHEREx and PUNCH exactly where we need to be, getting ready for SPHEREx deployment. An exciting time. I know Farah is looking forward to that one. So are we, but things continue to look good.
And there you can see on your screen that the MVAC engine is now shutting down.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And you know, the second burn is actually a lot earlier than in other missions because, again, SPHEREx has to avoid the sun even on its way up to that sun synchronous orbit.
Yeah, as Mark Hammonds mentioned earlier, the earlier second burn is a planned burn to ensure that SPHEREx maintains that sun avoidance while achieving its intended orbit, and we heard nominal insertion there. This timing helps prevent the exposure to excessive solar radiation, keeps our thermal conditions that we just heard about within our limits, and ensures that proper instrumentation performance on the spacecraft getting ready for this trajectory and separation.
And we did have a confirmation of second engine cutoff as well as good orbital insertion, as Mick called out there. And we are coming up in a few minutes. We will have, actually in about 30 seconds, we will have payload deploy of SPHEREx. We've got some great live views there on your screen. Earth looks amazing there.
That is a really great view. And we're glad to have it. Again, we're expecting that deploy at 41:56, about there. SPHEREx was designed to operate for at least 2 years, but the team says if all goes well, it could operate much longer.
Expecting deployment here in just a few seconds.
SPHEREx separation confirmed.
And there we heard the call out, and now you can see that there on your screen. SPHEREx is drifting away from Falcon 9's second stage, confirming deployment.
Woohoo! It took everything in me not to talk over you and go, yay!
So exciting.
Are you kidding? Farah is at the hostess right now, jumping up and down.
I'm sure.
Yeah, again, great live views. It's always nice to see. And again, this is a great opportunity for the spacecraft team to see it happen in real time. So now the spacecraft has a 3-minute pass over a ground station in Antarctica. You might have heard it mentioned a couple of times in the broadcast. Troll is what that ground station is called. And the team hopes to confirm an initial signal with the spacecraft.
Yeah, that initial signal will primarily be gathering engineering data for its health and status at this time. And once they confirm that and that it's ready to be operational, SPHEREx will then transition into its science phase, starting with calibration and test observations over the next few days or weeks that Farah had mentioned, and another pass over another ground station in Norway at about T plus 80 minutes. So about 40 minutes from now, they will start working on that and confirm that everything looks great on SPHEREx. So we're just waiting to hear that initial engineering data check from on AOS for SPHEREx, where they start receiving that engineering data just to make sure everything is good there at Troll.
Those iconic cones around the spacecraft, again, you can still make it out as it gets farther and farther from the second stage. But actually, let's take a look inside the Mission Directors Center. So that is one of the rooms that we have at Vandenberg Space Force Base. And sitting inside there, we have NASA personnel, but we also have SPHEREx and PUNCH personnel. Actually, if you look at the front row of your screen, directly to the right of the aisle, that is Jamie Bach, and he's the principal investigator for SPHEREx. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be looking at him for a reaction.
I don't know. I'm going to be looking at that whole room. I think they're going to be just as excited as
he
everybody.
Waved. I think he heard us. You're watching. We're watching him. He's watching us.
Yeah, we're waiting for that initial AOS for that engineering checkout, and that team in the Mission Director Center there at 836 at Vandenberg Space Force Base, I know is excited to see this deployment also.
Yeah, and he's in that first row. He's joined by some more spacecraft team members, as well as from some leadership at JPL. So really glad to just see the whole team there, waiting for again this important milestone. Again, we have this 3-minute pass with this ground station. So anywhere in this time, if we're able to get a hi, hello, quick acquisition of signal, that would be a great sign for the team. And then those subsequent passes over different ground stations, again, Norway as well as Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska, will give them an opportunity to get even more information and more data from the spacecraft.
Beautiful views from second stage there. Second stage performed very well tonight. Still continuing its mission with that second burn. We still have Punch on board, and things looking great there as second stage continues to coast.
Yeah, Mick, some of my favorite things about launch is really the views from space that you don't get to see from down here, but we get to see it from the spacecraft out in space during these missions. And these were some incredible views tonight.
Yeah, it really puts into perspective what we're doing here. We are sending spacecraft that do incredible science out into an orbit around the Earth, and all the data that's collected. This is science that touches all different kinds of disciplines. Specifically for SPHEREx, right? It's again just being able to see and map our universe in a way that we've never done it before. It's going to really answer some of astrophysics' biggest questions. And then for Punch, studying our sun and understanding how it can affect us in terms of space weather, comms going down, telecommunications, satellites, things like that, all affected by space weather. So Punch is really going to help us understand how to better predict when space weather might affect us.
And it looked like we did lose acquisition of signal from the second stage, but the mission isn't over yet. Falcon 9 second stage is still carrying NASA's Punch mission, 4 satellites that will study our sun's corona. And those will start deploying around 52 minutes after launch. So be sure to stick around for that just a few minutes from now.
Thank you so much, Megan, Mick, and Jesse. And Farah, what is next for SPHEREx?
So, of course, we would have liked to hear it from it right now, but this, it's a very short pass, as you heard, and so the SPHEREx is continuing to orbit around the Earth. It's getting itself into the right configuration. It's going to go over another ground station called Svalbard up in Norway in about 40 minutes, so we'll hopefully hear from it then. And so we'll be anxiously waiting to hear from her and to tell us that she's doing well in space.
Well, thank you so much for that update, Farah. And joining us now is project scientist Olivier Doré. Olivier, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So Olivier, tell us, SPHEREx is taking a 3D map of the universe, right? How and why is it doing that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks, Farah. And this question is really at the core of SPHEREx mission goals and also its design. So let me start with the why. And to explain you the why, I will use this crystal ball here. And don't worry, I'll use a crystal ball to explain the past and not to predict the future. So, but if you look closely at this crystal ball here, what you see inside, you see all kind of small filamentary structures, elongated structures that connect and intersect. Some kind of three-dimensional spider web. So this turned out to be a really good visualization or representation of how galaxies are distributed throughout the universe. And in fact, we call that the cosmic web. So what SPHEREx wants to do is make a three-dimensional map of the cosmic web over the whole sky. And the reason we want to do that is simply the fact that by making this map of the cosmic web over the whole sky, we can get very unique insight about the very first moment of the universe, when the universe was only a fraction of a second old. So that's really what we want to do. And so to get to the first part of your question, the how, so that we will do that by really mapping the whole sky in 102 colors. And so why do we want to use colors? It's very simple. So if you look at the sky, you take a picture, you will see exactly where stars and galaxies are. But if you want to know how far they are from you, if you really want to measure the third dimension, you need to use the color information. By using colors, you can really tell how far a galaxy is from. You can really tell the distance between you and a galaxy. And so you can construct, if you map the whole sky with these 102 colors, you can really construct all sky three-dimensional map of the cosmic web, and that's really what we want to do.
And how does SPHEREx use color when mapping?
Right. So we will use, to make this map, we will use what we would like to use, rainbow colored glasses. Mm-hmm. And so you can think, when you use rainbow glasses, what's very interesting about it is that the color you see slightly is different depending on exactly where you look at. And so you could say that SPHEREx will use some kind of astronomical grade rainbow glasses that we put in front of our detectors. And so it means that each part of our detectors will see slightly different colors. And so by planning a very careful sequence of pictures of exposures, we can really reconstruct all sky map in 102 colors. And that's really what we will do, that how we will get this 102 colors that we need to make this map, this three-dimensional map of the cosmic web.
Great. Thank you so much for your insight, Olivier.
My pleasure. Yeah.
So we are actually now heading back to Hawthorne, California for an update.
Thanks, Raquel. We are just about a minute away from SPHEREx coming up here. We're T plus 51 minutes into NASA's SPHEREx and PUNCH missions from Vandenberg Space Force Base. About 9 minutes ago, we watched SPHEREx separate from the Falcon 9 second stage, and the SPHEREx team then confirmed, and we did not confirm acquisition of signal just yet. We will confirm that at the next opportunity.
But now it's Punch's turn.
Yeah.
So they're going to deploy in 2 batches, right? So the first 2 are going to deploy around T plus 52 minutes and 16 seconds. So that's about 45 seconds from now. And then the other at T plus 53:07. Again, some great views that we're seeing here from the second stage, looking down on Earth, carrying 4 PUNCH spacecraft.
And as you talked about those 4 PUNCH spacecraft deploying in 2 sets, one of the reasons we are doing that is to separate the sets so that we can get them started on their way and make sure they're heading in the right directions and avoid the second stage and anything else that might be in the path. So keeping PUNCH to make sure everything is successful. Deploy 1 set and deploy a second set a few seconds later. That will help everything with deployment tonight and call this mission to an end, getting PUNCH on its way for its science.
Two, separation confirmed.
Wow, look at that. To actually see them. That's great.
And we heard that call out, and
that is amazing. Yeah.
PUNCH drifting away from the Falcon 9 second stage. That is the first of 2 payload deployments, and we are expecting the next one coming up in just about 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, I'll tell you, seeing that that was just as incredible as seeing SPHEREx separate those 2 satellites separating, and then the next 2 coming up, getting that constellation out there so PUNCH can do their science. That's very important, and I know the PUNCH team is looking forward to that.
Yeah, and we are deploying these in a bit of a different orientation from SPHEREx. We did see SPHEREx drift away very slowly from the second stage, and these PUNCH payloads are going in a different direction. So,
Wi-Fi 1 and 3, separation confirmed.
Look at that. That is amazing. That is just amazing.
Yeah, the second batch right there. It is really cool to see. And again, I just know that the spacecraft teams really appreciate this opportunity to see this happen in real time. So what an incredible, incredible view. All right, so the PUNCH team is going to have to wait a bit longer to confirm their acquisition of signal for both sets of spacecraft. Mick, can you talk to us about when they expect to be able to confirm signals?
Yeah, the PUNCH team will have to wait about 30 minutes, Megan, to acquire signal from one of the spacecraft. Now that we have separated them successfully and things look great, this will help to confirm the signal for all 4, or they'll hope to confirm the signal to all 4 satellites within an hour after separation today. So a little bit more time for the PUNCH team to verify everything is good, but it was awesome to see separation tonight and PUNCH on its way.
Yeah, it's again important to mention that, again, 4 separate spacecraft. We will have to acquire signal with each of those spacecraft, but again, they're hoping to acquire signal with all of those four spacecraft. That's a tongue twister. 4 spacecraft within an hour from now, which is when we just separated. So we will not be able to cover that live for you guys, but we will be updating our social media, and you can also check out blogs.nasa.gov/punch.
Yeah, and these views have been so incredible. It has been such an exciting mission so far. And this really is just the beginning of the journey for SPHEREx and for Punch. I know we've been live for about 55 minutes with this mission, but this is the beginning of the journey, of a very long journey for both missions.
Both spacecraft doing some great science, as we've heard throughout the show, with the mapping of our universe and the solar wind studies and all. And I got to tell you, looking at the shots on the screen, I'm kind of thankful to Farah and the team for the sun avoidance requirement, because we are seeing some great views of Earth from our second stage here, and as we have deployed these satellites. It's just amazing to see these live views from space, as you mentioned earlier, Jesse.
Yeah, and like you just mentioned, sometimes we get a lot of sun glare into the camera on the second stage vehicle, but because we are avoiding the sun, just like you said, we have some epic views of Earth there. They look so clear. It's incredible. The what am I trying to say? Like the pixels that we can get from being so far away from Earth. It is just incredible.
Yeah. And again, if you're just joining us, you're listening to me, Megan Cruz, and this is Jesse from SpaceX, who was just chatting, and then the only guy on here, so you know when he's talking, that's Mick Woolman, also from NASA. And the three of us are at Hawthorne, and we're commentating through some of the incredible views that we're seeing from space right now. You know, a couple of minutes ago, we saw the SPHEREx spacecraft deploy from the second stage, and then a few minutes after that, we saw in two batches all four Punch spacecraft also deploy. So it's been really great being able to commentate through this and be able to share this with the public. But for now, let's send it back to Raquel and Farah.
Well, thank you for that update, Megan, Mick, and Jesse. So tonight, NASA's Launch Services Program has successfully launched SPHEREx and Punch. Joining us now is tonight's Assistant Launch Manager for NASA's Launch Services Program, Tim Dunn. Tim, another successful launch for NASA's Launch Services Program. How are you feeling in this moment?
Well, Raquel, I'm feeling incredibly excited. Hopefully I'm representative of the team. I just left a building on North Vandenberg, the SpaceX Launch and Landing Center, where there was incredible positive energy after launch. And then I was on the phone with our NASA launch manager, Denton Gibson, on the ride down here. And we got spacecraft SEP of SPHEREx. And I could hear in the background the cheering and the yelling in that room. And I know it was replicated in the rooms here at Building 836 with all of the team present here at Vandenberg.
You could probably hear Farah at that point.
Yeah, probably from the parking lot out there.
Wonderful.
So tell us what's next for LSP.
Oh, gosh, what's next? Well, let's see. We have some different missions this year. So this was what we call a full-up NASA Launch Services mission, and we've got two more of those this year, Farah. We've got one called IMAP in September, back from the Cape.
Also with some ride shares, right?
And it has ride shares on it also, yes, indeed. SWIFO and Carruthers will be the ride shares there. And then we come back to Vandenberg at the end of the year in November, and we launch another JPL mission, the Sentinel 6B mission. So we always love coming out here to Vandenberg and looking really forward to that. But also, scattered throughout the year, we have what we call our Vader missions. There are Class D, more risk-tolerant missions, maybe smaller spacecraft. But the first one up will be this summer, where we're launching a spacecraft to Mars, the Escapade mission. So, and that would go on the New Glenn rocket, which is Blue Origin's new rocket that successfully launched in January of this year. So looking forward to that one. And then we have a Tracers mission just ahead of that in the May timeframe, we believe, from Vandenberg here. And then we finish up in the September, October timeframe with two missions that look like they're going to ride together. The Pandora mission riding with the TSIS-2 mission. So we've got across the board, big spacecraft, small spacecraft, both coasts, just a lot of excitement in Launch Services Program in 2025.
Busy year for you.
Yes, very busy, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And
all right, Tim, thank you so much for that. We actually have an acquisition of signal update from the team at Hawthorne.
Well, we can. Here we go.
All right, everyone, we are now 59 minutes, 51 seconds from liftoff. Again, we watched the Falcon 9 rocket lift off with 2 NASA missions. We had SPHEREx as well as PUNCH. We did watch all 5 spacecraft deploy from the Falcon 9 second stage. We had some great views of those, again, live. And then we are currently waiting on AOS for all 5 spacecraft. Mick, talk to us about the opportunities. You know, the spacecraft team for SPHEREx was hoping that we would be able to confirm a signal within the first couple of minutes after separation. But we did also know that's a short 3-minute pass. It's this next one that's a longer opportunity where they hope to really acquire that signal.
Yeah, their next opportunity will be over the Fairbanks ground station, and they'll be looking for checking out SPHEREx and making sure things are healthy and looking good for SPHEREx as they get into getting ready for conditioning for science mission and all. But again, we did separate them very well into a proper orbit. Things looking good. PUNCH separated, and we're about 20 minutes, I think, from getting signal for the PUNCH team, and they'll start off receiving signal for 1, and then in about an hour get signal for all 4 to verify that PUNCH is good. And so the teams will be on console monitoring that and looking for that. And I'm sure that we will hear about that through our social media stuff, through NASA and that. But I will say tonight's launch was amazing. Seeing the separation of all 5 spacecraft was great. And, you know, this has been just an absolute great day to see this launch with everything that we've gone through for this mission.
Yeah, so again, waiting for those opportunities to acquire signal from all of the spacecraft. Again, we are looking at T plus around 80 minutes for the SPHEREx spacecraft, and then also for the PUNCH spacecraft. The first opportunity for at least one of them is about 74 minutes after separation. So again, a really great time. We were so happy to be here with you, Jesse.
Yeah, it was awesome. I will say it was awesome being with both of you, but thank you, Jesse, for having us.
I work with them all the time.
No, it's been so great having you both here. I've had so much fun on this mission. And we'd also like to thank NASA for their trust in us and for being a frequent flyer with SpaceX. We'd also like to thank the range and the FAA for their ongoing support of our missions. And we've got another busy year ahead of us, so check us out at SpaceX.com for up-to-date missions and schedules, and follow us at SpaceX on X for updates.
All right. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and we'll toss it back to the host desk now.
Thank you so much. And we also have updates that will be coming in on go.nasa.gov and blogs.nasa.gov/punch, blogs.nasa.gov/SPHEREx. And before we wrap things up, let's take one more look at tonight's Falcon 9 launch of SPHEREx and PUNCH.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go SPHEREx, go PUNCH.
SPHEREx and PUNCH on their way to map out our universe like never before and revolutionize space weather forecasting.
We are T plus 30 seconds into flight, and we are currently firing all 9 of those M1D engines. And after about 50 seconds, we'll begin throttling down those engines, which slow the vehicle down just slightly in order to prepare.
Power telemetry nominal.
In order to prepare for passing through max Q, and that is maximum aerodynamic pressure. That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see during ascent, so slowing the vehicle down.
Vehicle
Hello and welcome to this very special show aboard the Albert, which is the latest ship that has been launched by Maersk. Well, we are at GNPT and the naming ceremony has just gotten done. Well, naming ceremony is very customary, goes back way back to thousands of years perhaps, and is done differently in various cultures there. Well, the important thing about this ship is that one, it's the 11th coming in from Maersk. We are at GNPT right now. This is the second largest ship in the fleet of Maersk. We are told that this is 350 meters long. That is 3 football grounds here. This also can take around 16,000 plus containers on board, and it is expected to go via Middle East to Europe. And the most important thing about this ship is that this runs on green fuel. Joining now to take this discussion forward is Vincent Clerc. He's Global CEO at Maersk. Vincent, hi, thank you so much for joining us here at CNBC India. Congratulations on Albert to begin with. And how do you look at India in the overall map of things, and how important is a naming ceremony for your vessel here in India?
Well, I think in general, if you look at the world economy in general, there's a lot of uncertainties, there is a lot of also areas that are slowing down compared to what we have seen over the past few decades, and you have a bright spot. And this bright spot is India, that has really hit a stride, and where we're seeing an acceleration of the growth, an acceleration of the development. And of course, for a company like Maersk, it is important to signify in a very symbolic but very powerful way our commitment to playing our part in bringing that transformation about.
Since we are talking about India, Vincent, you also pledged $5 billion in coming few years. How do you look at this investment, in what areas, and how much time frame?
So I think what is really important for us is to look at how we can support the development of India, and what does India need where we have capabilities that are differentiating. We know how to develop ports and operate ports. We know how to develop and operate warehouses, inland infrastructure. We know how to develop also. We have a large technology base here that we're going to continue to increase. But if you look at the $5 billion, the lion's share of it is going to go to terminal infrastructure and inland logistics infrastructure to support the growth that there is in this country.
Vincent, you also, the company that is also has met the Indian Prime Minister, and there has been a talk about alliance, Green Fuel Alliance, that is. What does it really mean, and what is the time frame and roadmap here?
Well, I think there is a great alignment between our goal for decarbonizing our operation and the vision that there is for India becoming a powerhouse in the new world of green energies. And I think that for us, making these two agendas meet in a powerful way, and again playing our part in bringing this about while also serving what we want to do for the world, what we want to do for our customers, makes a lot of sense.
Talk about this ship now, Albert. This has been named, and naming ceremonies are usually, when it comes to maritime and shipping companies, big deal, and I saw that one today. How important is this ship? This is one of its kind. This is going to be running on complete green fuel. Tell us more about this one.
Well, I think always the name giving within the maritime sector, within our industry, is really big. This is the time where you actually come and hope with the Godmother really give it a blessing and wish it, safe sailings and prosperity and so on. So it's a really, really important symbolic event. It is especially symbolic because it is the first time that it happens in India. Ever. We've been here for over 100 years and have never had such an event. So from that perspective, it's very important. But it is important also because it is a different design. It is a different technology. It is a real beacon of hope and a symbol of that. It's not just words, but the future is actually coming, and this is how it looks.
This is one of the green fuel ships that you have. So what is the number right now, and what really is the plan going forward?
So this is the 9th ship that we have joining, and they will continue to come. In the same series, we have 26 ships on order, so there will be more of those coming during the rest of this year and next year. And we have other series that are following that in the coming years. So this is part of our fleet renewal program to make sure that the network that we have remains the most competitive network out there, but also a network that enables us to reach the decarbonization goal that we've put forward.
It also is going to be about availability of green fuel. As of now, we do understand that China is your major source for that. But is India giving you those kind of numbers? What are the kind of conversations that you have in India for this?
Yeah, so the markets for green fuels, and especially the supply of green fuel, is still emerging markets. And it is true that so far A few Chinese projects have gone faster than what we have seen elsewhere in the world, and that's why so far the contracts that we have signed are mostly in China. But we're actively looking for diversification of sourcing, because a lot of our ships do not call China. A lot of our ships, like Albert Maersk, will be sailing between India and Europe, and so it is important for us to find sources of energy, either in India or on the way between India and Europe. And there is a lot of really promising projects here, but we need to really, I think, encourage the development. It takes some risks to be the first ones to have a big project come online. We need a lot of that green fuel to power this ship and its sisters. So there is a scale element in that. But again, this is a dialogue that we're having with different projects here in India, and we're looking forward to hopefully seeing one of them come into a real business and signing a contract and having the first step in this diversification.
Vincent, also when you talk about the recent budget that went by for the Indian markets here, there was this reference of maritime and shipping and how India wants to play a bigger role in that. There were time frames set as well. How do you see being part of that?
I think this is a really opportune moment for India to actually reflect on the role that they play in the maritime industry. 1 employee in 5 in Maersk is an Indian passport holder. So it's the largest nationality in our company by far. And it will continue to grow. I mean, we have interest. 40% of our seafarers are Indian. Most of our technology is sitting in our technology center here in Bangalore. We have big resource centers. So the footprint and the role that India is playing into the global supply chain, into the shipping and the maritime sector is outsized. And it is great to see that this is becoming in focus now, and we're going to get even more energy behind developing capabilities here.
Vincent, talking slightly bigger here, and when you look at the global trade at this point in time, do you see, and how much would you see India's growth numbers leading to that? When you look at various geographies in sense of global trade, where is India standing?
I think if you look at India today, where India really stands out is in the growth that it delivers. Between 8 and 10% growth in the market, likely to continue in the coming years. This is, given the size of the market, actually quite unique nowadays, and certainly the role and the place that India is going to play in the global supply chain is going to continue to increase in the coming years. So it is important. A ship like this would not have been economically viable to serve India just a few years ago. Okay. But this growth is actually allowing us to upgrade and to continue to invest in the infrastructure to support this, lower the cost of logistics, bring the world markets closer to India in a way by taking away these frictions and these costs.
Talk to us also about on what's really happening in the global markets right now, and with the US president talking about tariffs, some of them implemented, some of them still being talked about. Has it had an impact, and how are you looking at the impact if actual tariffs are implemented?
So I think the reality on the ground so far is that you cannot see neither pull forward nor any type of consequences of the tariff activities that there has been so far. And for a reason that is fairly simple. What determines the demand for transport is the consumption. If consumption doesn't slow down, then demand remains strong and people have to source. And at sourcing, capacity is not widely available. So sourcing is actually sticky, and it takes time for things to shift in terms of sourcing. So our expectation is still that tariffs or no tariffs, in the very short run, it is hard to see that this can have a massive impact. Okay. Unless inflation was to really ignite again at a very, very high level. That would certainly, then we would certainly move into a different type of scenarios. But if demand stays as robust as it is, tariff or no tariff, containers will continue to move largely from the same origins, largely in the same regions. But you will see a gradual shift. We just talked about the growth in India a few minutes ago. The market share of India in global trade is going to grow in the coming year. That's certain. And that means that more of that capacity is being added in India than anywhere else.
How are you looking at, as you said, you're looking to come to India in a big way. We've been working together for 100 years now, and you're looking at very huge investments as well. So going forward, though, what are the challenges that you see in India? And I'm sure you're having conversations with various counterparts here, but what is it that really sticks out?
Well, it is actually, growth can be painful when it comes as fast on such a big base. India is a huge country, 1.4 billion people spread over a huge geography that needs to be connected. Everything needs to be stood up at the same time for it to continue. So it's a huge challenge. It's a challenge for companies like ours to do our part. It's a challenge for the government to orchestrate all of this and to do the part that they have to do. So far, I think that the fact that this growth is sustaining itself for a few years already is a sign that things are going well. But the more we grow, the more 10% of a bigger number becomes a very big number. And then you have to continue to accelerate and accelerate, because what you did last year is not going to support 10% next year. You're going to need a bit more. So sustaining this, I think, is going to be key.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Vincent, also you're into 130 countries and you have a huge fleet. What are Maersk plans going forward from here? Are you looking at more businesses? Are you looking at increasing capacity, increasing fleet? What really are the numbers you're working with?
So our strategy for now is actually that the world is adding ship capacity faster than it is adding inland infrastructure, whether it is